I'm Professor Robert Weir. I've written 3 books about the Knights of Labor, and in this little video I want to give you a little bit of an introduction about how to think about the Knights of Labor. First of all, you should forget everything that you think you know about labor unions because the Knights of Labor were not that kind of labor union. If you think that a labor union is just about getting higher wages or different conditions, the Knights of Labor wanted to do that, but they wanted to do far more. They were not a craft union in the sense that only teachers or plumbers or carpenters could join them. They were a type of union that's sometimes called social reform unionism. That is, they saw that the liberation of workers would come in society in general, not just at the workplace. They were formed in Philadelphia in 1869. They were completely secret until 1878. They from the very beginning sought to be something other than a regular labor union. Many of those unions had been collapsed during economic depressions in the 1870s. The Knights of Labor, in fact, had a very elaborate ritual, and in their early days they might have looked a little bit more like Freemasons than a labor union, but they evolved quite a bit. In most unions, as I said, if you're a teacher, you belong to a teacher's union. If you're a plumber, you belong to a plumber's union. The Knights of Labor, anyone who agreed with their principles could be a member of the organization, no matter what their job. That meant that they could have in their ranks people like small business people, and they did. It meant that they could have women, African Americans, and they did. They organized women and African Americans on an equal basis with white men. They also organized immigrants, with the exception of the Chinese. They didn't like the Chinese, though even some Chinese made their ways into the Knights of Labor. You could join the Knights of Labor unless you were in a couple of restricted categories. They didn't want any lawyers, they didn't want any gamblers, they didn't want any bankers, and they didn't want any speculators. They also didn't want people involved in the liquor trade. What they wanted, again, they did want higher wages, they wanted better conditions for the workers and so forth, but they again thought that society itself had to change before the plight of workers would be better for workers. So they called for an enormous number of reforms in society. They wanted land, for example, to be reserved only for people who lived on the land. They wanted equal pay for women. They even floated an equal rights amendment for women. They wanted laws to change the banking system. They wanted the public, not private individuals, to own key things such as transportation systems, communication systems, utilities, and things of that nature. They wanted mandatory arbitration of disputes. Oddly enough, the Knights of Labor did not believe in strikes. They thought that strikes seldom resulted in any kind of good result for either the workers or their employers, and they sought other means. They did go on strike, but they only did so as a last resort. When they had a dispute with their employers, they first tried to work it out rationally. If that didn't work, they launched boycotts against their employer, and they tried to bring both public and political pressure to bear on their employees, or their employers, excuse me. They also called for an end to the wage system. In the ideal world of the Knights of Labor, wages would be abolished in the sense that one person is paying another person to work for them. In their world, employees themselves would own the businesses in which they worked. This is called cooperative economy or cooperation. And the Knights of Labor set up numerous cooperatives of their own where they made their own things and the workers employed they actually were part owners. Were they successful? They're the first important labor federation in American history. A labor federation is a union of unions. The American Federation of Labor, Congress of Industrial Organizations today is a federation that represents other unions. The Knights of Labor are the first important one in American history. By 1886, they had 729,000 dues-paying members and many, many more times that number who actually claimed affiliation with the organization. They had over 1 million people by 1886. They were ahead of their time, and I'll discuss in a future video what happened to the Knights of Labor, but they were certainly enormously important, and I'll touch upon that as well. The height of their influence is roughly 1882 to about 1890. They faded thereafter. And a lot of historians, I think, pretty much ignore them after 1890. I think that's a mistake. I also don't think they get their due in history in general. But we'll talk about that in a future lecture.